By the 1850s, Chartism, the largest working class movement of the 19th century, was a spent force. None of the 6 points of its People's Charter had been achieved. On the surface, it appears Chartism was a failure. However, by 1918, 5 of the 6 points had been achieved, with only annual parliaments left outstanding. How then can we assess the significance of a movement that collapsed decades before its objectives were met? Part of Chartism's significance lies in the fact that it was the first truly mass working-class political movement in British history. By 1842, there were approximately 50,000 Chartists and 400 branches across the country. The Chartist newspaper, the Northern Star, was also available nationwide and had a circulation of 36,000 at its height, while Asa Briggs argued that regional variations in the movement undermined its national character. More recently, historians point to the common goal of the People's Charter as evidence of a unified movement. The act of collecting signatures for the Chartist national petitions of 1839, 1842 and 1848 also served as a means to unite Chartists, instilling a shared sense of belonging and collective purpose. 1840 also saw the formation of a National Charter Association, led by Fergus O'Connor, to coordinate the movement. Chartism was also significant for the scale of the mass petitions it presented to Parliament. Between 1839 and 1848, 3 mass petitions were presented. The first, in 1839, had 1.2 million signatories. The 1842 petition, 3.3 million, and the 1848 petition, according to O'Connor, 6 million names, although some of these turned out to be fake. The 1848 petition was presented after a meeting of an estimated 150,000 Chartists at Kennington Common. Public meetings were a common feature of the Chartist movement. The Chartist newspaper, Northern Star, would often be read aloud at public meetings, enabling those unable to read to listen and contribute to the wider political discussions. It was also common for Chartist meetings to feature guest lecturers. Following Parliament's rejection of the 1842 petition, a general strike made up of 500,000 workers followed, the largest show of working-class solidarity Britain had witnessed. As well as striking, many workers also took to committing acts of industrial sabotage. When church leaders spoke out against Chartism, local Chartists packed out the congregation. They would arrive early so they could occupy the private pews of rich parishioners and demand the vicar preach on a suitably Chartist text. Chartism provided working-class people with a training in political activism that long outlasted the movement itself. These skills, and a sense of value in the taking political action, would prove invaluable later in the century when former Chartists would play key roles in forming early trade unions and socialist groups. Both the Whigs and the Tories declared that the Great Reform Act of 1832 was a final and irrevocable settlement of the electoral question. Whilst the Chartists failed to advance the cause of parliamentary reform in their own time, they kept alive the question of reform until bodies such as the National Reform Union and National Reform League could take up the struggle in 1864. The significance of Chartism lay not in what it achieved, or failed to achieve, but in the practices and people it drew together. It was the first mass working-class political movement. The Chartist model and methods of campaigning would be replicated later in the century in a much wider programme of political reform. Finally, they are significant for the name they chose to adopt. In calling themselves the Chartists, they saw themselves as both the inheritors and protectors of a tradition of liberty and freedom that had begun at Runnymede in 1215 with another great charter.